Okay. So last week we have been doing a discussion, and then don't worry, there's a recording. I will send it to you as well. Um, so good evening and welcome to the second day of the um, Buddhism for daily life. And I'm sorry if I lose track of any of you, because I have to watch both this in person and Zoom, which is another challenge after COVID. Back in the day, we did not have this problem. We could only do either in person or a Skype. But that's fine. So I hope you all had a good week last week. And the beginning of the discussion, I was explaining about the structure of what we are going to do and a few ground rules. But only one ground rule you need to remember, that you need to go with a lighter heart, a lighter mind after each session. But I kept on asking a lot of questions from everyone. I don't know if that kept you from your sleep, peaceful sleep. I asked a question: why did you join this conversation? And it goes to everyone who's new today as well. I asked you, why did you, out of this all the work that you have, and it's a beautiful day, without doing all that, without enjoying the sunshine, without being with your loved ones, doing all that, why did you join this discussion today? Why did you plan to come here today? So that's a question for you. But then I asked a more serious question. What is the purpose of your existence? What's the primary, the underlying motivation behind your existence, behind your life, right? That was a serious question. But in order to break down that question, I started asking a set of other questions. So the first question was, what's the purpose of your life? Why do you live? But then we got into, what is life? Instead of trying to answer that question, because this question might look very obvious and upfront, but the answer is very difficult to get out, right? So instead of trying to look at why do we live, we started to observe or to figure out, brainstorm. Everyone here helped me as well. We wanted to look at what life is, and then we figured that life is, in order to figure out what life is, we wanted to look at what a dead person doesn't and a living person has. And then we figured that a dead person doesn't respond to us. Again, back in the day, this was my habit. Whenever I go to a funeral, I would poke the body, which is a bad habit. But I was very curious why they are lying like that. And they do not respond. And at least they don't respond, but we can't for sure say that they can't think or feel, or they don't have a sensory stimulus. We don't know. I'm not dead yet, so I'm not sure of that either. But we know that we can safely assume, when we are in sleep, when we are down with anesthetics, we sort of go through a similar phase. We don't feel, we don't think, we cannot think of the past, the future. The thinking is stopped. Our emotions are not there, and our mind activity is not there, and we don't feel senses, 5 senses from the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and the body. We've been just meditating on those 5 things, or at least 1 or 2 things of those, right? And the next thing that we figured was the living and the dead. The difference: the dead would not be associating the 4 P's. I will keep on talking about these 4 P's. The 4 P's are, the dead people don't associate with people, with his friends, with his family. He does not interact. He does not interact. He does not go to places. That's the second P. He can't go to the Walmart. He can't go to the school. He does not interact with places. And he does not have pastimes. He does not have hobbies. He does not have physical activities. No pastimes. So I made it pastimes to summarize all the activities a person would do. And he does not have any possession. He absolutely has nothing. There was this great king, the King Alexander. Even Steve Jobs, in his deathbed, he said, well, I made the biggest empire, Apple company, but after my death, I'm not going to own anything. And that's a simple truth for anyone. We are we do not interact with the four P's: people, places, possessions, and pastimes, right? So that is what a living person has and a dead does not have. So we are trying to figure out what life is now. So now we have a rough idea what are the aspects of life, what are the ingredients of life. And then again, the real question that we are trying to answer is why do we exist, right? That's the question that we are trying to answer. And then another way to look at it is why would you cease to exist? Instead of trying to figure out why we exist, what if we can cease to exist now? Right? So I asked a question: are you ready to die right now? And some said, I'm not ready. Some said, I'm ready. But then I asked the question, well, you might be ready, but are you willing to go right now? Like this minute. It's 7:32 now, 37 now. Are you ready to go by 7:38? Right? So that was the next question. And some would even still say, I'm ready. And ask, it's a rhetorical question, but just think about it. Are you ready to go by 7:38? Right? And some said yes, some said no. So we had a discussion the other day on Zoom. And the people who were not ready to go, some were ready and some were not ready. So the people who were not ready to go, they gave me some answers. They said, I have unfinished business. I have to pay my bill. Otherwise, it's going to make a big issue. I need to make my insurance payment, because after your so-called death, someone is going to benefit. So you need to settle few things. I need to send that final report because it's the end of the second quarter. I need to send that report to my office, right? So there's so many unfinished business. Again, every time I go down the Blenheim Road here and go to that cemetery, Mount Cemetery, Mount something cemetery, beautiful place. I take a walk and then sit there and watch the sunset there. Very peaceful. All of these tombstones, they have RIP, rest in peace. But imagine if 7:39 is your last moment. Will you be truly able to rest in peace? If you have sorted all your business, you can. Otherwise, it would be very hard to do, right? So then people who are not ready, they said they have other business. And they said they have other responsibilities. They have responsibility towards family, your professional life, to the society, the civic legal system. There's responsibility, and that's why I would not want to, end or go right now. And then people who were ready but who were not willing to go right now, they said that, it's a nice idea, but I'm not certain of what's going to happen afterwards. Because in some cultures, they give you a guarantee that you can sacrifice yourself to the god and then you're going to meet the god right after. No, it's perfectly guaranteed. I watch and I read a lot of Norse religion. There's a heaven called Valhalla. And back in the day, it was a tradition to do human sacrifices. This is the Norse religion, which is now currently the Scandinavian. The Vikings, they were having this religion. It's sometimes referred to as paganism also, animism, paganism. So they believed in something, and according to them, they had an absolute guarantee that they are going to go to Valhalla. So they were ready to go. Unlike some of you, they said, well, I'm ready and I'm willing to go, because they had that guarantee. And so if you're not ready, it might be because you might not be sure of what's going to happen right after, right? It looks like it's a mystery. We don't know yet. And the other part is that even if we are ready, we might not want to go now in a painful manner. Nobody wants to get into a car crash and then have something poisonous and suffer a lot and then go away. And you're not ready to do that. So apart from all that, there was Cloud, who was here. He was telling that everyone has a biological survival need, right? And if you look at any living thing here, the turtles, the geese, the trees, any living thing has this biological need to survive. In fact, we are built to survive. We are not built to die. We are built to survive. We have our immunity. You have a scratch and the body heals. We have a scratch in our mind. The mind heals sometimes. Sometimes it leaves a scar, but it eventually heals. So we have this biological survival need. How I know this is because back in the day, in my past life as a layperson, I was into adventure sports. And I have come across, not me personally, but I have come across so many accidents of my friends who were around me. I don't know, for some reason, I never came across a major accident, but I have seen so many accidents. Bones come out, skulls fractured, cuts, bruises, broken limbs, many accidents, because I was into surfing, so there was all sorts of accidents there. I was into kayaking and mountain climbing, rock climbing, whitewater rafting. They all give you these accidents, and one single thing I noticed is that every person in this survival mode is grasping for that last bit of straw, for that last hope. No one is really ready to go, right? So I have personally been closer to death about 3 times. Again, I didn't die, obviously, but I was very close to death. And I will discuss it later on in a future session. But I have seen people around me, they are not ready to go. They, in fact, want to survive. So there's this survival instinct which kicks in, and they are not ready to go. They do not want to go. And so even the non-sentient, the non-thinking beings, trees basically, microorganism, single cellular microorganism like COVID, which is a virus. He doesn't want to go. He wants to stay in the world. We want him to go, spray Lysol, give the COVID medication, and he wants to stay. Right? So we have this survival need. Any unsentient being has this survival need. But the question here is, what's the conscious need of existing? What's the sentient need of existing? So again, to put it very briefly, that we like living over death, right? Even if we are ready, we might not want to go by 7:45. I'm always telling the next minute, right? We are not ready to do that. And I also have the fear, I'm afraid of the unknown. I'm afraid what's going to happen to after my death. And then I also come across people who want to die, like really die. So you don't want to die, but some people do want to die. Right? I come across a lot of people, at least 1 or 2 a month, right? Some die, some stay, some think that it was a wrong decision, a bad decision, but in that moment they really want to go. So I have seen that moment where you really want to go, you're set to go, right? And when I inquire them, when I ask why they want to go, we find people who are euthanizing themselves for medical reasons, right? Euthanization is there. They want to go because of medical reasons. And the hospice patients, I see a lot of them also. They want to go. Obviously, there's no medical treatment available for them. It's the full organ failure, and there's absolutely nothing can be done. And they are ready to, there's no option for them. So for medical reasons, they go. But some people, most people, their lives become miserable, 90% of the time, or at least 80% of the time, it's related to a partner and a breakup and something like that. A few percentage is based on shame. Something bad happened, and he or she is not very happy about what happened, feel betrayed, too stressed out, can't just handle that emotion. So we want to go. Some people would even say, I don't have a purpose, I don't have a direction, and nothing seems to be working out. There's no sense, there's no essence in this world. A little nihilistic, and they want to go. Very few. But we see that they want to go because their lives are full of miserable events, bad experiences, and there's no hope for them in the future. So they want to go. So why we looked at it? Because we are still trying to figure out, why are we living, right? That's the main question that we need to figure out. And then we saw that or we could at least assume temporarily, that reasons for life, reasons for existence are basically that I would like to avoid the negative part of it, the sadness, pain, I would like to avoid it, and I would like to have the positive side of it, the happiness, the comfort. I would like to be happy, and then I would like to be a little hopeful, because I recently saw an experiment done on the rats. It's an old experiment, a behavioral experiment. So the rats are put into a beaker, like a container of water, and they can't climb out. So they're struggling to climb out, but they can't. And after about 8 minutes, they just give up, because it's the end of they are exhausted, and they give up and they are drowning, right? So what the scientists did was, it's a cruel experiment, so some they let the mice drown, but for some mice they picked them at the last minute. On the 11th hour, they just took the mice out and then put him back again. That's why I said it's a very cruel experiment, right? And this time he would stay for longer than 8 minutes. See, we should think that physically he's more exhausted, he should go in 4 minutes. But because that he has this slight glimpse of hope, because of that hope, he's waiting, giving the final breath in his life, the final energy in his muscle, and he's willing to stay afloat, thinking that someone is going to save him. So this hope in our life is also very important. You call it purpose, you call it your ultimate direction, or you call it that little bit of hope that you have. Everything is bad for me right now, but eventually things are going to get better, so therefore I'm not going to go, right? When you are out of that, when your life is full of misery, you want to go. So in a way, will it be okay if I say roughly, for the time being, everything I'm going to say, I'm going to rephrase it towards the end of it, right? So temporarily we could say that the reason for existence is that we would like to avoid sadness, be happy, and then we have a little bit of hope. And so in this part, I want to completely take out the negative experiences from this discussion, at least the beginning of this discussion. Why? Because Buddhism has this bad reputation. I don't know if some of you have heard of Buddhism, that Buddhism talks about suffering, right? And suffering is life, right? And this is the single reason that back in the day I did not want to associate Buddhism. Who would want to, learn something about suffering, right? I didn't want to do that. And I'm not going to teach you about suffering. I'm going to teach you about happiness, right? So I'm going to focus on that other part. And then the other day, the last week, I said, I don't have hope, I don't have dreams, which also is very nihilistic. It's very existential nihilism. That's the proper word for that, right? Existential nihilism. So because of that, I'm going to talk about the positive part and completely take the suffering part that we usually talk during Buddhism. So maybe there's a reason that I take this approach, because in my previous life as a layperson, I was I was almost never depressed, right? There were ups and downs when you're a kid, when you grow up, one or two girls might have broken my heart, but nothing major. I move on quickly, and I was very happy usually. And then I became a monk in pursuit of how to become even more happier, right? So it's nothing related to happiness. In fact, it's quite funny. The name Ananda literally means bliss, happy, bliss, etc. And there was a very important question the other day towards the end. What is happiness? So let's try to figure out what we call or what we mean when we say happiness also in a little while. So then let's find happiness, which is the primary purpose of our lives, at least for the time being. And we'll look at hope on a later day, but today we'll try to look at what happiness is. So happiness, like I said, based on the question that I said I'm going to answer today, happiness can be viewed in many forms, or at least what we call happiness. So there's this happiness which comes out of the dopamine rush, right? When you when you are excited, when you see something beautiful, when you hear something nice, something that you like, when you drink something that you would like to taste. That sensory happiness, sensory based happiness is there. So we can call that the first part of the happiness. Wishes coming true. You were working on something and that project is doing good. You wanted a baby, there's a nice baby. You wanted a partner, there's a nice partner. You wanted a house. So wishes coming true, that happiness is one part. Again, the sensory based happiness. When you go to the store and then you get your nice aroma, when you get your nice sensory experience, you are happy. But then apart from that happiness, there's another aspect to happiness. We could even call it not happiness, but we could call it fulfillment, the content or gratification. So that's a different stage of happiness. It's different to just being purely dopamine based happy, right? It's a different form of a happiness, a sense of fulfillment, a sense of gratification, sense of being content. And that's a different part. And then there's a third part that is called the blissful part, ananda. Ananda literally means bliss. So we are going to divide it into three: the raw form of happiness, the fulfillment, gratification based part, and then there's another part. Let's not try to define what it is, but let's keep it there. There's a third part also, and we'll see what's the difference between the gratification and this bliss. And obviously you know the difference between the raw happiness and the satisfying fulfillment gratification part. So let me real quickly share my presentation. The other day I have sent the link to some of you, but I don't think I have included the full thing there. Just hang on for a minute. Oh, oops, what happened? I wanted to share with you this. Now we see it. Okay. On the Zoom. Okay. So I shared this with you the other day. This is classic Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy. Almost most of you know this, and Maslow one day figured why people do what people do, what keeps them motivated, right? And in the bottom of this pyramid, we have our physiological needs, then the safety needs, love. So if your physiological needs are not met, you might not think about the other things, because when you are hungry, you can't think about esteem, you can't think about love and belongingness, you can't think about self-actualization. So in the bottom, the first four layers, we could attach it to the first form of happiness, the raw form of happiness, and maybe towards the self-actualization, it might be a little deeper form of happiness. It might be what we now trying to call the gratification or fulfillment. But then what I wanted to show today is another similar pyramid. It's not a pyramid, it's based on yoga, the philosophy of yoga. So in yoga, you have 7 chakras. I'm sure that you have heard about it. And these 7 chakras are sometimes called energy points. There's energy there, But again, if you go to the true yoga philosophy, the other day I told the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali and what we call yoga as an exercise are totally two different things. And if you read the original text, that you would find it's more than an energy interpretation. It tells you that this particular chakra is related to a desire or an emotion or a motivation you have. So in the base chakra, which is called the Mooladhara chakra, it's about the sense of belonging, money, career, your possessions. That's the first one. And the second part is about sexuality, pleasure. How do you pleasure yourself? That's the second chakra. And then you have the Manipura chakra here. It's about the power and ability, your social strata, esteem, that part. So there's a difference between the first 3 chakras and the next 4 chakras. The next 4 chakras would fall more on the self-actualization part, where Maslow had it on the top, but in the yoga, it goes on to explain in different stages of self-actualization. And again, if your Muladhara chakra is not satisfied, you would not be thinking about this or what is on top of that, right? So it has to be filled, then only you would move to the next level, or at least start thinking about that. So then the fourth one here, the heart chakra, it's about compassion. It's about self-acceptance. It's more on a self-actualization path. And then on top, the throat, you have self-expression, truthfulness. And then you have this one, which is called the third eye. So third eye is known as the sense of purpose, right? One of the questions that we are trying to ask, right? So if your third eye is open, you know the sense of purpose. And then finally, we have the Sahasra chakra, which is the connection to the Brahma, or connection to the divinity, or the ultimate nature, the ultimate bliss. So you now see a little bit of a resemblance of what we are trying to say. So again, this is not directly related to Buddhism, but bulk of Buddhism is based on the contemporary thinking which was available in that country, Hinduism. So in this is Hinduism. I told you the other day, I don't know if it was for you or for some other group, I was telling that Hinduism is not a one single ideology. It's many ideologies, right? It's a package of many different ideas. So in this chakra, we find the self-actualization part and the more happiness, dopamine-based part, the two parts, right? And I really like the last one before the Sahasra chakra, the third eye. So we have our two eyes to see things, but then we will get a third eye, which does not appear here in the as depicted. It does not appear as a new eye, but it's an eye to see inwards, to see the purpose, right? So it's all self-actualization in that. So again, we have the happiness and the fulfillment part. Let's leave the bliss part for the time being. So let's focus on that. Now, the next question I wanted to ask, did I stop sharing the screen? Okay. The next question is that, how do we become happy? Right? Again, these might be very obvious, and these are not related to any Buddhism. This is your life experience, right? And very simple questions. But like we were just meditating, we breathe from the day we were literally born until the day we are dead. But we don't look at how we breathe. We don't try to experience that. So some of these questions are not answered. We don't know the answer, right? Because we have never spent time on that. So let's try to figure out, how do we become happy? So could you from the Zoom tell me, how do you become happy? Lily? Unmute.
Yeah, I say there are two ways to be happy.
Okay.
I think these are universal. Number one, stop thinking about yourself.
Right.
And number two, serve others wherever you find the opportunity.
Right. Very good answers. Can we make it really simple? How do you become happy? How did you become happy today? Right? How did you become happy today? Can someone else answer me that? John? Jean, sorry.
For me, it's connections.
Connections. Okay. Connections. What do you think, Paloma? What made you happy today?
A few answers were coming up. Stop thinking.
Stop thinking.
And also acceptance.
Acceptance. You know what? You guys give me very good answers, but for a moment, let's stop being so serious about life. Right? Don't eating an ice cream makes you happy on a nice summer warm day. Right? There are simple happinesses which are available. Right? While all these other answers are great, let's be a kid for a minute. right? When we eat an ice cream, not ice cream, whatever you like, listen to the music that you like, right? Taste, our olfactory senses, our comfort. We become happy when with certain comforts, right? When we If you like cars, if you like new phones, if you like new computers, using them, buying them, which um, make you happy. Practicing to reduce deep attachments also makes Sampath happy. Let's get into that. But in a very crude sense, I'm talking about the very crude happiness, right? Satisfying your five senses makes you happy. That's how we become happy, and that's what we've been actually doing all this time. And now we are trying to find different answers, right? But without the five senses, we cannot be happy. Sometimes we can be happy even without the five senses, by just thinking about good things. We don't need the five senses, we only need the sixth sense, which is the brain or mind, what you call it. So with that we can be happy. But then again, if you look at what you used to become used to be happy with the mind element, it is something coming from the five senses again. Does that make sense? Now you might be thinking, yes.
I was sort of thinking about this recently, and I was thinking of it from the perspective of that the goal isn't so much happiness as it is peace.
Peace, right. Very good,
Because
very good.
Peace is more like sustainable, I find, where
Right.
happiness like
Ups and downs.
comes and goes.
Very good, very good. Don't worry. So obviously that we know that there's a difference between the fulfillment, peaceful part and the happiness. Everyone understand that. But let's try to figure out the crude happiness part first, because bulk of our life we've been chasing that part, right? Not the peace part, right? Maybe now you are trying to answer your self-actualization questions. Maybe that's also the answer why you joined this discussion, right? But most of our life as kids we were not after peace, right? We just simply want to eat ice cream, play, and right? When we were teens, we want to try new things, do naughty things, and when we were young adults, we were not after peace, we were after all these other things. So let's try to figure that out. Let's get to the fulfillment, gratification, satisfaction part later. So if we look at the first part, it's very much five sense based, and even just thinking is based on the five senses. Because of course when you meditate, you will find a stage where you do not think, or your mind is not based on the five senses. It's out of five senses. But most usual thinking is based on the five senses. We think about an image, we think about a sound, a taste, a touch. That's what we think about. Our experiences are based on those five things, right? But then, could you turn the light on? Yeah. But then we also have this other things which I called the four P's. Our happiness is based on people. Our happiness is based on places. Our happiness is based on possessions, pastimes. In fact, the entire life, entire happiness and your entire life can be put into those four P's. People that we interact with, that we like, associating the people that we like to hang out makes us happy. Going to places that we like to go, like this place might make you happy, and that you come here, so you interact with the place, it makes you happy. You have your activities, so let me call that the pastimes. You have different activities, yoga, jogging, video games, whatever. You have your possessions. You would like to have certain things. Starting from the phone, it's like a staple need, right? And Wi-Fi. Everyone needs Wi-Fi now, right? So you have these belongings, you have these possessions, the four P's, that make you happy. And to be happy, how about dreaming about the future achievements? Yes, of course. I think that's related to the past thing that we were touching base on. Our future achievements, would you think that they are based on the five senses? Can we imagine a future achievement without the sound, image, sense, touch? Can we? I'm not saying that there's nothing beyond the five senses based mind. There is. I have seen that. But on our normal day-to-day thinking, if you are not in a deep trance, what you think is based on the five senses, right? So going back to our happiness, our crude happiness is based on the fourth piece, our senses. And if we dig deep, these happinesses, they have a characteristic. So let's not go to the peace or the blissfulness yet. We'll keep it for the time being, and let's focus on the happiness part. How a kid would usually become happy, how you became happy when you were young, right? Or most of your life. These characteristics, there are certain characteristics in this happiness. And the characteristics are that they are very much dependent on resources. Now, what I mean by that is, let me try to go to my presentation. Okay, here. Let me share it with Zoom. So this is our life from end to end, right? From the beginning to the end, whether you are masculine or feminine. So we have different stages of our life, and during each stage, in order to have that crude happiness, that basic happiness, we need to have certain resources, right? So you might find that during the first part of our life, when we are a kid, we need a set of resources, but we are also deprived of certain resources. The basic three resources that we need to be happy is very simple. It's time, energy, and money, right? When I say money, back in the day when the world was very primitive, they did not have money, but there was still value in the world. There was a barter system. Everything was exchanged based on a value. So your bargaining power, money is actually defined as the power of the bargaining power, not the value is based on that. So time, energy, and money are the critical resources for us to become happy. But again, if you look at your life cycle here, when you are young, especially when you're a kid, you have all the time in the world because you do not have homework, you do not have coursework. You have the energy, you can heal pretty quickly, you are not tired, you can jump up and down endlessly. But when you grow a little older, like when they are 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, you would not be having enough money to buy everything that you would like to have. The kids below 5, they don't have this issue, right? I'm talking about when we are a little older, in our early teens, pre-teens, teenage years. We have the time, we have the energy, but we might not have the money. Our parents might not have the money, right? We don't have the money. So we can't enjoy the life for the fullest, and we cannot achieve that 100% happiness. When we are in our working life, we have the money, we have the energy, we are young, but we don't have the time. I know this because it's so hard for people to come and meditate here. Sit for a 3-day silent retreat. It's difficult because we simply do not have the time when we are young. But we have the money, we have the energy. What happens is when we are a little older, when we are retirement age, we have the money. Of course, you cashed in your house. You can buy your stuff. You have the time, but you might not have the energy. I have so many good friends here who are above 75, 80. They can walk only for so many steps per day. They get easily tired. They have different ailments. They have different disorders. So they do not have the energy to stay up and do what a kid would do, right? So our happiness is restricted based on those three things throughout our life. It would be a very lucky person who would have all these three things unrestrictedly at any given point of his life. That would be that person, we can call him a lucky person. He is not deprived of money, energy, or time at any given point of his life. But most of us are deprived of one of these things or two of these things. We either do not have the time or the money or the energy to become happy. And the second part is these things that we become happy are very much dependent on external factors. And external factors, as we know, they are not always under our control. I mean, we can, as kids, as young adults, we can strive to get a lot of money, but it's not totally up to our striving that we would end up with all that money, right? There are other works, other forces in play. We can try to, as adults, we can try to strive for time, but again, once we are in that rat race, it's so hard to get out of that and find that time. Trust me, I know that I worked as a professional for my early life, and it's very hard to take unpaid vacation leave. Unpaid vacation is not possible for most of us. A gap year is not very possible for most students nowadays, right? And energy, we base it on that external factor, but it's not always up to us. Some of us are born with certain disabilities. We do not have the full capacity a normal person would have. Some of us are not tall enough to do certain sports. Some of us are not so big enough, muscle enough to do certain sports, to do things that we would make us happy. And there are all these acts of God, force majeure acts of God. COVID, right? It stopped us from being happy because, we could not go to our ice cream shop. We could not go to our theater. Many people are out here in this summer like crazy now, because they were so deprived of all these things. Now they are out. They are all over. You go to towns outside. The hotels are fully booked during the summer. The cruises are booked, the airlines are booked, fully booked, and way more expensive than it used to be now, right? Why they were deprived during the COVID years, COVID months. So there are these acts of God that we can't foresee and we can't control. Hence, our happiness is dependent on these uncontrollable activities. There was this event which happened in Sri Lanka, which was a tsunami. You remember that in 2004? The country got wiped out. I was a student at the uni. That very night, I went to the affected areas with the military guys, and we were helping out the rescue. Well, there was nothing to be rescued there. It was all dead bodies, like hundreds of dead bodies. I remember very vividly the first time I went to that place where there was a lot of dead bodies. I stepped on something, and I was trying to figure out what I stepped on, and I'm sorry if it's too vivid and uncomfortable, but it was an eyeball, right, of a person which was out there. And I personally removed, I don't know, 200, 300 bodies from the day one to till about a week. So towards the last days, they became so swollen, and when you lift someone, their skin would come off like a sheath. So terrible sight. But the thing I noticed about myself is that I don't get disgusted. Nothing really affects me a lot, so I was perfectly fine. I would eat right next to the 100 corpse, So, but what I wanted to say is that these terrible things could happen to anyone, and these terrible things could happen to anyone. There's a question from Sampath. I'll answer that as well. So these things could happen. And then one more thing I wanted to show you is that we have our life and then we have our happiness. However, would you notice that as and when we grow old, the cost of happiness increases? Is that correct? Now, what I mean by that is that we also have a Sunday school here, bi-weekly, and I tend to play with the kids when they come, all ages, from 5 years to 7, 12 years to the teens. I play with them, right? It makes me happy, right? And when I play with the very young girls and boys, young kids, they are happy with very few things, like a stone, a pebble, or some very silly thing, just not even a cent, not even $1, right? Something which is very cheap, they are happy. Back in the day, I remember I loved rockets, right? Even to date, I follow all the rocket programs. And I remember being very happy with a ballpoint pen. I thought it's a two-stage rocket, where you could leave the stages and then the final capsule can land on my imaginary moon. I was just happy with under $1. But as and when you grow, you need more expensive stuff. You need your PS4s, you need your gaming stuff. More and more you grow, the cost of your happiness increases. In fact, when you grow old, it might not be the cost of happiness, but it might be the cost of your medical bills. So it keeps on increasing from the childhood. As and when we grow old, the cost of happiness is increasing. So I'm trying to outline some of the characteristics of happiness, right? And the next part is that this happiness has this effect of fading away. Just go back to that time of your life where you were the most happy, or like very happy. That happiness is not there anymore now. It was a moment, and that moment fades away, right? In fact, you cannot contain that happiness. You cannot be happy 100%. You can't have that state of mind where you are euphoric, ecstatic 100% of the time. It fades away. There's this wonderful thing that I learned back in the day. It's called the bell curve. If you have heard of the bell curve, it's a very common occurrence in the world. It's a very natural phenomena. If you take a sample of students, there will be a median a set of people who have the highest number. There will be a middle number of people who would have there will be a lot more people who rank in the middle. There will be a very few people at the top. There will be a very few people who are flunking the exam. This is a natural curve for your GPA, grade point average. This is the case with COVID. A few people did not contract, few people died. Most of them, they contracted, nothing happened, right? And this bell curve you see everywhere in the world. In fact, this is true to our happiness also, right? It's similar to the bell curve. It has a starting point, it increases, and then it dissipates, right? Think of anything. You might not have heard of vanilla ice cream before, and one day you start hearing about vanilla ice cream. I'm just taking an example for the first time. You were hopeful what it would be, and then you start building up your dream, and then you go and got your first vanilla ice cream. You tasted it. Sometimes you can be heartbroken because it was not up to the expectation. But usually what happens is, if it's up to our expectation, we become happy. But you keep on eating vanilla ice creams, you're not going to be happy anymore. It's going to give you the diminishing return. Your happiness will fade away. You're very happy with eating a nice dessert, cheesecake. But how many cheesecakes can you consume and be happy? Just having two might not make you twice happy. It starts giving you a diminishing return, right? Any happy memory, it falls under this bell curve. It keeps changing. And just go back to every possession you had that you liked. Your latest phone, your latest laptop, your latest house, right? When the first day that you started interacting with that, it made you very happy. Few days after, you just don't care, you just throw it away. You don't want to even polish it. Your car, right? Your loved car. Even your partner, right? Some of us, we grow old with the same partner, but the first few days are nice, the infatuation is nice, and then it fades away. Then it's a matter of responsibilities, and other things which keeps you together. But the first few days, the infatuation is very beautiful. Everyone likes that part, right? Where you are hormonal and everything looks beautiful. And the other part is that we need continuous change. The other day, I can't remember who asked me that question, but looking at different things makes us happy. In fact, imagine our world, or right now at 8:22, got frozen. Everything became static. You would stop enjoying life. You would be miserable. Now, you might not believe me, but you must have heard of Robinson Crusoe, who got stuck in an island back in the day, right? When you are put into a place where there's no change, when everything is static, you are going to go crazy faster than you think. Trust me. There's a nice movie I watched called um, Immaculate Room, where it's a story, but a couple were put into a room where it's immaculate. Everything is white, the food is white, everything is white, and you are given a challenge to stay there for 60 days, and you will win $5 million, right? But no one completes that task. It's hard. There's another guy who does these type of experiments. He stays in a room for 3 days, white immaculate room. He goes crazy after 24 hours. I mean, you pretty much went crazy during the first period of the COVID. Everything got so boring, right? You exhausted the movies and Netflix and everything, but towards the end, you were done with it. You wanted to, you want the country to open up, the restrictions to ease out, right? So we need continuous change. If we are deprived of these things, we are going to be very unhappy. We are going to be very grumpy. There are these things in Hamilton, Lily. There are these things called the isolation pods. In all over, we find these sensory deprivation pods. Go into one of these sensory deprivation pods. They are usually 90 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 hours, 4 hours. Just try it. If you don't trust me, it will be very hard unless you have that nature in you that you can be okay even with that absence of variety. And now what happened to me is that by being a very professional person, a very busy person doing a lot of things, I became a monk, and then I had to spend time in a jungle where there's nothing. There's very few stimulation. There are monkeys and elephants and snakes, but other than that, very few. No cell phone, no news, no internet, nothing, right? So it's pretty much like being in a COVID lockdown, right? And meditation is again a sensory deprivation of sort, right? Especially when you get into certain levels of your mind, there's nothing. There's very few things, at least, right? Few thoughts, no thoughts. And if you're not used to that emptiness, it's not easy. In fact, many people would go crazy with that emptiness, right? So these are the characteristics of happiness, right? I just want to build a conversation with you now. Do you disagree with anything that I just mentioned? I'm not trying to tell something. I just wanted to point out things from your life, right? These are not things that which are written in a book or anything. It's not Buddhism. It's just our daily observation. So I said that characteristics of happiness as that they are dependent on external factors, and we need the resources to find this happiness: time, energy, money, and the cost of happiness increase. I remember being very happy eating a very like a ice cream right next to my school when I was young, and when I grew older, I needed many luxuries. When I was a student, I used to backpack, but when I became a professional, I always made sure I had a 4-star at least. So I became more dependent on these things. I had to spend more to have that happiness. But even after spending a lot more, I was not still happy like that kid who would go by the roadside vendor and eat an ice cream, right? So the cost of happiness is increasing. Happiness is never static. The maximum euphoria you had is not there now. It fades away, right? And if you are deprived of change, you would want to again kill yourself, right? So those are the characteristics. Now let's build up. Is that right? I've been talking all this time. I want to ask you, is that fine? Is that true? Or do you have other views of happiness? Again, I'm not talking about the peace or the blissfulness, gratification, satisfaction, not that yet. I'm talking about the happiness which you have been chasing most of your life, right? So what do you think? Yes, Palama?
When you were building on it, I just realized that, yeah, there are still parts in me who wants change, who is going on building, depending on the energy and time and money. but also there's a part that tries to say like, oh, it's all good, I can live without that.
Right.
But when I was reflecting on what you're saying, like this is reality.
Right. Very good.
And in fact, I can get restless, which means like doing a lot of things at the same, one after one after. So just listening to that makes me made me realize that
Right.
I'm still a human, and
Don't worry about it. In fact, the whole point of this is not to get into conclusions yet. At least wait till the 8th week to get into conclusions. Right? Yeah. The whole exercise is we are trying to figure out ourselves. Right? These are very simple things which have been lying there, but we did not put enough focus on that. We did not have the time. So this exercise is we are trying to figure these small nitty-gritty things. Right? They might sound nitty-gritty, but these are the reasons why you are alive now, why you live, the purpose of your existence, right? And we are talking about the crude level of happiness, and that happiness is based on these few things I mentioned. So what do you think on Zoom? Any thoughts? Any questions? Suggestions? Yeah? Diane?
I think sometimes happiness is a choice.
Very good.
I don't know if it's always that way, but when I've been feeling really down for a long time, and I don't want that anymore, and so I change my thinking, and I say that, I want to feel good.
Right.
And so I find ways to make myself feel good.
Very good, very good. We will get to that point next week, right? What we are trying to figure out today is that what makes us happy, right? Not how to be happy, what makes us happy. How do we become happy, right? Of course, what Diane said was very correct, but we'll try to break it down. We'll try to have a microscopic view of this. Because all this time we have been skimming through this. We have been not paying enough attention to these things, right? Now what we are trying to do is that put it under microscope and then see the make of it. And by doing that, we are trying to identify nothing but ourselves, our nature, right? That's what we are trying to do. Don't worry, don't get into any conclusion about anything. And don't think too hard when you end this discussion about all these life problems, self-actualization problems. Just take it very slowly. We will try to understand. No pressure, no philosophy here. Very simple. Everything is your life, not my life, your experience, so you know it. We are just trying to be reflective now. Yes?
I don't know if this is going to make sense, but when you're a kid, so much of happiness is just like novelty.
Right.
Almost, it seems like.
Right.
But when you're older, it seems like happiness is more about like lessening pain.
Right. Right. Very good point. Very good point, yeah?
And also, maybe as you get older, if you find that child has softened you, you may feel happier. But again, maybe losing that playfulness, right?
Right. You become more serious about life.
Childish nature, then I think it increases the cost of happiness.
Right. So again, I'll address the second part. We lose that child nature after we are 5 years old, 8 years old. After that,
this
brain starts kicking in, right? So for this discussion, let's be let's be children. We'll be very simple. We'll take life very unseriously. Only during this hour, right? When you go out to do what you usually do, we'll try to figure out things very simply. And on the first point you mentioned, which is a very interesting point, When you're a child, everything is novel, everything is new.
Yeah.
Now, I can tell you one thing. If you come here on a good day, you might find that we have a turkey farm just a kilometer down here, and it starts smelling the day that they're cleaning the turkey stuff, right? So it really smells. But the good thing is, after few hours we are exposed to it, we get used to it. Right? So it's called desensitization of anything, be it a pain, be it a pleasure, be it experiences. That novelty, the newness goes off. When the newness is not there, it does not give the same kick. It even happens to your addictions. You drink one coffee, then you want to top up on two coffees, more caffeine. You drink one cigarette, two cigarettes, two drinks, three drinks, one shot of meth, few shots of meth, right? That's the nature of our body and mind again. Yeah. So what we are trying to do is look at these things, not get into conclusions, but try to identify the nature of these things, which are very natural. Nature of our body, nature of our mind, nature of our psychology, and the nature of the nature.
And also nature of it may be out of the scope, but nature of this dimension, right?
Right.
The third dimension.
Third dimension. That also very importantly.
The world.
Correct. So I'll quickly do this. I promised it's going to be an hour. So I'll officially end the discussion here. What we discussed today, the first day we discussed about the purpose of life and why did you join the Buddhism for daily life discussion. I will keep asking the same question until the 8th day, right? I want you to figure it out yourself. Just look for the answer. And then the more important question is, what is life and why do we live? We took many approaches to see the alternative side of it. Would I want to go now? Am I ready to go now? Can I opt to leave this world now? Right? We asked many questions in many forms, and today we were looking at different characteristics of this happiness what we have, but we also broke it down to three parts: the happiness part, the peace part, or the fulfillment part, right? Gratification part, and then the bliss part. The bliss will leave it to some other day. Peace also will leave it to some other day, but we'll focus on the happiness part, because most of us, except for a very few maybe, we have been chasing this happiness during our lives, which is perfectly fine, which is perfectly natural. We are only trying to understand this. So that's what we discussed today. But then feel free to stay as long as you want to, and let's ask the questions that you have, right? Sampath had something. I agree with your description, but what we really needs are still free. Okay. The kindness, peaceful, sleep, trust, love, right? Yeah, he's right. We also need to differentiate between what we need and what we want.
Yeah.
Right?
I think what we discussed was more about what we want.
Right? But again, if we look at it, I can very safely say I live with what I need, because a monk usually has two sets of robes, a place to live, food, and medicine. I might have $20 in my purse, but that's my entire possession, right? I have no. There's family because you can't cut ties, right? But they are not family. You are my family. When I move from this place to the other place, they are my family. So I have no links or ties, right? I do not have brands. I use whatever people give me, and I do not have even preference for food. I eat what people give me, which is a very nice thing. I also mentioned that I will give you a little bit of trivia of what Buddhism and a monk's life. When we get ordained, the custom in Sri Lanka, in South or in Asian countries, is that you go out with a ball on this thing called the Bhiksha. So every day from my jungle cave temple, my cave, I come out at 6 o'clock, climb down for about 4 kilometers in the middle of the jungle. So elephants are settled down by that time. And you usually walk bare feet, which is a fantastic experience. Walking bare feet in the jungle is amazing. And then you go to the nearest village And then the village was very poor because it was a remote area. Some of them, they just survive on one meal or two meals a day, like very very remote. But my existence is not a difficulty for them, because they only have to part with a spoon of rice, which anyone can do. They don't have to offer me a full meal, right? One person would give me a spoon of rice. I go to 10 houses, I have 10 spoons of rice, which is good enough for me. And that practice of bhiksha taught me so many things. Sometimes I go to the house. So when you go on that practice bhiksha, you're not supposed to knock on the door and say, I came here for food. You're not going to say that. You're just going to appear on the doorstep or the in front of the house, and then you are going to be very silent. So if they see you, they might come and offer you the food. If they don't see you, you don't get the food, right? So the first few days I got ordained, I remember we can do it only once a day, because that rock was at a place where you can't climb up and down twice a day. It was very difficult to come down. So we only have one meal a day, and you have that meal a day, and then you stay over the night, and then by the morning you're pretty hungry, right? And you come down to the house, but I don't knock, I stay in front, but they don't see me. And I'm not going to stay there forever. I stay there for 2 minutes and then I move on, right? So I truly understand the difference between what we need and what we want, right? But if our lives, before I became a monk, I started living a very minimalistic lifestyle. I had 5 sets of black trousers, 5 sets of white shirts, and a set of ties. I made all the furniture disappear, just one table and 2 chairs, made my life very minimalistic. But I remember the day when I was going to the temple, I still had a truckload of stuff to be sent to my parents' house after being so minimalistic, right? So you might think that you are minimalistic, but you would understand the day that you have to walk with only one piece of garment and become a monk, that how unminimalistic we are. There's so many stuff. Again, I'm not asking you to be minimalistic or, leave all your stuff. Again, the true minimalism is not with your physical possession. It's how much attachment you have in here for these things, right? So again, you could see it in your physical form, but not necessarily you need to get rid of all your stuff and then live in an empty house. That's not the point of it. Anyway, what Sampath says is correct, that there's a demarcation between what we need and what we want. Our wantings are the ones which makes us happy, right? We are not used to being happy with our needs. The kids are used to that, right? Like what he says, the kindness, peaceful sleep. Sleep makes you happy, right? Do you have enough chance to sleep in a day? Now again, the good thing which happened to me after being a monk, I was the only one in the cave temple. I could sleep forever. No one would disturb me, right? But then again, you realize that there's so much you can sleep a day. And when you stay in a jungle, you actually start losing your sleep because you're so energetic. Again, when you meditate also, you could sleep only for 4 hours. Yeah, it's like a rock cave, and which is okay. It's not that difficult. Sometimes it will be one monk staying in another close by cave.
So it wasn't really a temple, it was just literally a cave.
It's a cave, yeah. There's no structure like this, it's just a cave. Yeah, but that's good. So again, any questions here on the Zoom?
I have a question.
Yes, Lily.
Where were you in the jungle?
Where? You mean the geographically?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it was Sri Lanka, and then there's the southern part of Sri Lanka, and then there's a area called, it's actually in the middle of a forest reserve called Buttala. So I was there. I was in another forest reserve up north. I was in like before I came to Canada, I lived in another cave which was in a primary forest called Singharaja Forest. You should live there. It's amazing, again, there's no electricity, there's no nothing, but it's just beautiful nature, and it's a primary forest, which means that it has never been cut down before by any human, untouched. And when you live in the forest, there's so much energy. Actually, your food intake becomes very low, your sleep becomes very low, you're very full because it's.
Right. Would you say that you were happy there?
I'm happy everywhere. I'm happy in downtown Toronto. I'm happy in the cave. I'm happy anywhere. So,
Yeah.
how did you avoid the dangerous animals in the jungle? What if a tiger came into you? Okay, so Daryl, like I was saying in the first cave, in many of the caves you have snakes, and usually they are venomous snakes. Um, my simple answer is that I am ready to go. So it doesn't bother me. I'm ready to go at 8:43. So maybe again I imagine that when you are in a family setting, it's difficult for you to do that because you have your responsibilities, right? Me, I was ready. So again, I think maybe I am stupid in a way. When you're ignorance is bliss, they say. Right? All the adventure sports I was doing, I could have easily died. I'm not a good swimmer, but I went into places where only pro surfers surf. Right? That's stupid, being stupid. But I don't have that element of fear in me, so maybe that's another factor.
I wonder, does Buddhism, based on what I've known,
Right.
Buddhism sort of dismisses this part of happiness, right? The crude piece of happiness.
Okay.
In Buddhism, it's usually dismissed, in a way like this is the part you need to break free from and all that.
Right.
Is this actual teaching or is it?
Very good question. So she has a very good question. Again, feel free to leave. We are just running on overtime. Is it bad or is it looked down in Buddhist teachings to have this crude happiness? Buddha has no problem with you having that happiness. What he's trying to say, or what Buddhism teaches you, is whether instead of trying to say this is good or bad, just try to look at it as it is. Try to understand the nature, right? Because that's very, very good question. One of the reasons that I stayed away from being religious, more religious you become, more judgmental you become.
Oh, yeah.
Try being a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian for the longest time, for 10 years straight. Only after I became a monk, I started eating everything else because people give me different things and I don't say no, right? But, when you are hardcore into any practice, you start feeling that you are superior than the others, and then you start.
The vegans have that reputation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Because we're all one and
Right.
equal.
Yeah, so we become judgmental. So in this case, Buddha has nothing against people being happy, people having their crude fun. Nothing is against that. In fact, he's just telling you things. See, this is how it is, and this is the building blocks of it. This is the nature of it, and see for yourself. And it's your personal choice whether you want to be peaceful, whether you want to be blissful, or whether you want to be happy, crude happy. It's up to you.
The interesting thing is when you see it as it is, which is awareness, right?
Right.
And then that awareness comes from the consciousness, and
Right.
consciousness informs itself. Oh, this is how it is.
Right.
And then just like how AI works, it kind of like, oh, I don't need that, or move on, right?
Right.
Or something else. So all we need is just to look at as it is.
As it is. Yeah.
But then looking at it as it is a big, long journey.
Right. So again, no, it's good that you mentioned it. It's good that you mentioned it, but for this week at least,
Yeah.
right? I want you to focus on the crude happiness and how we become happy and the characteristics of happiness. Because we have 6 more weeks to find out how we go there, get there. Let's try to, because again, like I said, what happens when we meditated, right? We've been watching our breath for almost an hour, right? We usually don't do that. So you take a small thing, and again, when I meditate, when I used to meditate back in the day in the temples, we would watch the breath for an entire day for 3 months. Nothing but just watching the breath. And trust me, you learn so much more if you look at your breath for 3 months. So, right? But our need is that we want to, really figure it out as fast as possible, right? So I'm just trying to apply breaks every time. While you all have great wisdom, I want to apply a break on your wisdom and be that little kid who does not think too much. Just think of why you joined this discussion, what's the meaning of this life, and the characteristics of happiness for this week. Right? Very simple.
It's hard to
It's hard
go
to.
up with thinking, right?
No, it's very, very true. It's very true. Yeah. So, Phil, all good with you? Good? Vincent, Kristen, Sampath, Greg, Nihal, all good? All right. Okay. So then we'll call it a day. If you by any chance miss it, I keep it recorded, so I will post it as well. And yeah, so I'll see you next week, and then let's try to find out the characteristics of happiness, and more importantly, the hope. We did not discuss about the hope part. Let's look at that part as well, right? Again, like I said, the depth you can go into even the simplest thing is immense. More deep you go, more understanding you have about yourself. Okay? All right? Okay. So I'll see you next week. Take care, and may all you be blissful, peaceful, and happy. Theruvan Saranai.
Thank you.
Bye.